Board, we need to discuss the housing benefit claims you've been approving.
I process hundreds of tenancy files every month. The caseload is overwhelming. We're understaffed.
Adaeze Okonkwo Bryant and Marcus Hartley operated inside a London council benefits office for 3 years without a single colleague questioning them. 48 fabricated files, over £1 million. Not one person checked. But the records told a different story.
Board, we need to discuss the housing benefit claims you've been approving.
I process hundreds of tenancy files every month. The caseload is overwhelming. We're understaffed.
£1 million in fraudulent claims across 48 fabricated tenancy files.
48 fabricated tenancy files. £1,041,000 in fraudulent housing benefit, paid out in monthly installments over 36 months. Every approval signature on those files traced back to 2 user IDs at the same Inner London Council. And one of them, AOCO 7741, belonged to the senior benefits assessor in this footage. By the time the DWP Fraud Investigation Service finished cross-matching national insurance numbers, Adaeze Okonkwo Bryant was looking at a Crown Court trial that would end with her in a women's prison in Surrey for 7 years and 2 months. Before we go any further, have you ever stopped to think about how much trust gets handed to a single council officer with a login? Drop a comment and tell me whether you'd assumed there were more checks in the system than this. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We hold these insider schemes accountable every single week on this channel, and the figures only get worse as this one unfolds. Adaeze Chinonso Okonkwo was born on the 3rd of February 1980 at King's College Hospital in Camberwell, South London. Her parents had arrived from Nigeria 7 years earlier on a Commonwealth visa. Her father, Emmanuel Okonkwo, was a mini-cab driver from Anambra State who worked 12-hour shifts out of a small office on Rye Lane in Peckham. Her mother, Chiamaka Okonkwo, was a care worker at a residential home for the elderly in Camberwell Green. Adaeze was their first child. Her brother Chika followed in 1982, her sister Ngozi in 1984. The family lived in a 2-bedroom flat on the 7th floor of a tower block on the North Peckham estate. The estate had been built in the 1970s and was already, by the time Adaeze was born, beginning the long decline that would eventually see it demolished in the late 1990s. The lifts broke down constantly. The communal walkways smelled of damp and worse. The council had a maintenance backlog that stretched into years. Adaeze grew up watching her mother fill in benefit forms at the kitchen table. Housing benefit, income support, council tax rebate, child benefit, disability living allowance, after her father injured his back in a minicab collision in 1989 and could no longer drive full-time. The paperwork came in brown envelopes. The replies came in brown envelopes. The denials came in brown envelopes. Her mother would sit at the kitchen table with the radio playing a Nigerian gospel station and a biro in her hand, frowning at boxes she did not entirely understand. Adaeze, 11 years old, would read the forms aloud to her mother and write in the answers when her mother nodded. She decided very early that she wanted to be on the other side of that counter. Not because she resented her mother, she did not, but because she had seen, up close, how a single misunderstood box on a single form could cost a family their rent for 3 months. She attended Walworth School for her secondary education and sat her GCSEs in the summer of 1996. Her grades were strong, 3 A's, 6 B's, 1 C in French. She moved on to Christ the King's 6th form in Brockley for her A-levels and chose sociology, English literature, and government and politics. Her 6th form tutors described her in references as, quote, diligent, articulate, and possessed of an unusually mature grasp of the structural realities facing working-class families in inner London, She left sixth form in 1998 with 3 solid B grades. She was the first person in her family to go to university. She enrolled at the University of Greenwich on a BA in Social Policy and graduated in the summer of 2001 with a 2.1. Her dissertation was titled Discretion at the Counter: Frontline Bureaucratic Decision-Making in the Administration of Housing Benefit in 3 South London boroughs. Her supervisor wrote in her final references that the work demonstrated, quote, an exceptional understanding of the human texture of social welfare administration. She applied to 4 local authorities for graduate trainee positions in 2001. 3 of them rejected her. Lambeth Council accepted her in January 2002 as a Band B benefits administrator on a starting salary of £14,200 a year. She was 21 years old. Her first office was a windowless room on the 2nd floor of the Brixton Town Hall Annex. She sat behind a glass partition at the reception counter 4 days a week and processed back-office case files on the 5th. She was good at it. Her case clearance figures consistently ranked in the top quartile of her cohort. Her annual performance review for the year ending March 2003 described her as, quote, demonstrating encyclopedic knowledge of housing benefit regulations and the temperament to explain those regulations clearly to anxious claimants. She was promoted to Band C in November 2004. In May of that same year, she met Anthony Bryant at a wedding in Catford. Anthony was 26, a hospital porter at King's College Hospital, the same hospital where Adaeze had been born, and the son of a Jamaican bus driver and an English shop manager from Lewisham. They married at Lewisham Register Office on the 12th of September, 2009. Their daughter Tinuola was born on the 17th of April, 2006. Adaeze stayed at Lambeth Council until February 2009. She left to take up a Band C assessor post at Larkmead London Borough Council in Inner East London on a salary of £22,400 a year. The move added 40 minutes to her morning commute, but offered a clearer career ladder. She was determined to climb it. She did. Within 4 years, she was a Band D assessor on £29,000. In June 2017, at the age of 37, she was promoted to Band E, Senior Benefits Assessor, on £41,600 a year. Her promotion review described her as, quote, a valued mentor to junior team members, with a, quote, particular gift for navigating the more complex tenancy verification cases that arrive on the team's desks. She was given supervisory responsibilities over 4 junior assessors and a permanent desk by the window on the 3rd floor of the Larkmead Civic Center. In November 2014, she and Anthony bought a 2-bedroom terraced house on a quiet residential street in Forest Gate for £312,000. The mortgage was 25 years. The monthly repayments were £1,496, which left, by Adaze's careful kitchen table calculations, very little spare each month. They were comfortable. They were not rich. They were exactly the kind of household that, on paper, looked like the British dream of upward mobility from a Peckham council flat to a Forest Gate freehold in 3 decades. Marcus Devlin Hartley joined the Larkmead Benefits Assessment Team in March 2018 on a Band D assessor's salary of £30,700. He was 35 years old. Born in Romford in 1983, the son of a black cab driver and a school dinner lady, he had studied public administration at the University of East London and spent the previous 11 years at Newham Council as a benefits administrator and, latterly, an assessor. He was divorced. He had a young son who lived with his ex-wife in Hornchurch. He arrived at Larkmead with a reputation for being quick, technically competent, and slightly too willing to talk about money in the staff kitchen. Adaeze was assigned as his mentor for his first 6 months. They got on. She found him sharp, dryly funny, and surprisingly knowledgeable about the small administrative gaps in the benefits assessment workflow that most assessors either ignored or did not notice. He noticed all of them. He could, in conversation, list them. She did not, at first, think anything of it. The housing benefit system in England in 2020 was a creature of slow decline. Universal credit was, in theory, replacing it for new working-age claimants. But in practice, the transition was years behind schedule, and councils across the country still administered hundreds of thousands of legacy housing benefit claims. Inner London boroughs like Larkmead handled the highest volumes. Larkmead's benefits assessment team processed an average of 120,000 individual claim adjustments per year. The mechanics of the system were straightforward on paper. A claimant submitted an application, either online through the council's claim portal or in person at the Civic Center reception. The application required a tenancy agreement, the landlord's name and bank details, the claimant's national insurance number, identification, proof of income, and proof of residence. An assessor reviewed the file. If everything was in order, the assessor verified the documents against the council's case management system and the DWP's central benefits database, calculated the entitlement against the local housing allowance rate for that postcode, and approved the claim using their user ID. Once approved, the council paid the housing benefit portion directly to the landlord's nominated bank account each month. The council tax support portion was credited against the property's council tax account. The claimant rarely saw the money. The landlord saw it. The system was designed that way for very deliberate reasons. It made it harder for claimants to spend the money on anything other than rent. It also made it harder for claimants to commit benefit fraud on their own behalf, because the money never touched their hands. What it did not make harder, what it in fact made considerably easier, was for the assessor and the landlord to be the same person. That was the vulnerability. The assessor was the gatekeeper. The assessor verified the tenancy agreement. The assessor confirmed the landlord's identity. The assessor signed off the claim. And under Larkmead's internal procedure, a claim with an annual housing benefit value under £15,000, which the vast majority of inner London single occupancy and small family claims fell under, required only one approval signature. No second pair of eyes. No mandatory property inspection. No mandatory in-person verification of the landlord. Internal Audit at Larkmead Council sampled approximately 2% of approved claims each financial year on a randomized rolling basis. The sample size was driven by staffing levels in the audit team, not by risk-based analysis. The audit team consisted of 3 full-time officers covering all council departments. Housing benefit was one of many areas they reviewed. In practice, an individual assessor's file might be audited once every 4 or 5 years, and even then, the audit would inspect documentation rather than independently verify the existence of the tenant, the landlord, or the property. That was the gap. That was the open door. That was the silence in the system that Adaeze Okonkwo-Bryant had been quietly cataloging in her head for the better part of 15 years. She knew exactly where the door was. She knew exactly how to walk through it. The first fabricated tenancy file was approved on the 23rd of October 2020. Adaeze was 40 years old. Marcus was not yet involved. She did it alone. The fictional tenant was named Chinedu Joseph Okeke. The name belonged to her cousin in Plymouth. Chinedu was 28, a real person, a security guard at a Sainsbury's distribution depot on the outskirts of Plymouth. and the holder of a genuine national insurance number that Adaeze had memorized from a family Christmas card 8 months earlier. He had no idea his name was about to be entered into the Larkmead Council benefits case management system. The fictional landlord was an entity called Oluchi Properties Limited. Oluchi Properties had been registered at Companies House on the 18th of August 2020, just over 2 months before the first claim. The sole listed director was Adaeze's sister-in-law, a 34-year-old nursery assistant who had agreed, over a long telephone conversation in July, to put her name on the paperwork in exchange for £400 per month. The sister-in-law did not understand the scheme. She understood that there was something not entirely above board about it. She did not ask. The £400 went into a separate account she had opened at Halifax for that purpose. The supposed tenancy was at a flat above a chicken and chips shop in Plaistow. The address did not correspond to any actual residential unit. There was, in reality, only a storage room above the shop, with no kitchen, no bathroom, and no entrance separate from the shop downstairs. None of that mattered, because no one ever inspected it. The tenancy agreement was a 6-page document Adaeze drafted at her own kitchen table one Sunday evening in early October, signed via DocuSign accounts she controlled at both ends, dated to be effective from the 1st of October 2020. She processed the claim herself on the morning of the 23rd of October. She logged in as AOCO 7741. She opened a new claim file. She entered Chinedu Okiki's national insurance number, which the DWP system accepted without flagging because it was a genuine number belonging to a genuine person with no other open housing benefit claim. She entered the Plaistow address. She uploaded the fabricated tenancy agreement. She entered Oluchi Properties Limited as the landlord and the company's HSBC business account as the destination for payments. She calculated the entitlement against the local housing allowance rate for the Newham postcode, £1,247 per month for a 1-bedroom flat, and added £218 per month in council tax support. She approved the claim with her user ID at 10:17 in the morning. It took, from login to approval, 11 minutes. The first monthly payment of £1,465 hit the Oluchi Properties HSBC account on the 28th of October 2020. 2 days later, Adaeze transferred £865 out of the company account into her personal Santander current account, leaving £400 for her sister-in-law and £200 to be sent on to her cousin Chinedu, who had been told only that he was helping his cousin with, quote, a paperwork thing for a tax break. Chinedu did not ask. The £200 went into his Plymouth current account each month from then on. It worked. No alarm sounded, no flag was raised. No one at Larkmead Council noticed anything at all. She added a second file in December 2020, a third in February 2021, a fourth in March. She brought Marcus in late March 2021 after a long late-night conversation in the third-floor kitchenette over the dregs of a pot of stewed PG tips. He had, by then, watched her enough to suspect. He asked her directly whether she was running something. She did not answer. He asked again. She said, eventually, that she might be willing to share something with the right partner. He said yes inside of a fortnight. Marcus brought his own network. 3 cousins in Newcastle, 2 old school friends in Liverpool, his wife's brother in Sheffield, a former neighbor in Manchester. All of them, in turn, were paid £200 a month to lend their national insurance number to a paperwork arrangement none of them had explained to them in any real detail. By June 2021, the joint operation was running 14 active fabricated files. By the end of 2021-27, By the summer of 2022, 38. By the summer of 2023, 48. The escalation was steady, methodical, and, in hindsight, extraordinarily disciplined. They never approved a file for a property in their own postcode. They spread the addresses across 6 different inner London boroughs whose local housing allowance rates Adaeze had memorized. They never used the same straw landlord on more than 3 files. They registered 6 different limited companies at Companies House over the course of 3 years, each with a different relative or friend as the listed director. They rotated the bank accounts. They staggered the application dates so no 2 new files were submitted in the same week. The split, by the 3rd year, had stabilized. Adaeze took approximately 55% of net proceeds. Marcus took approximately 30%. The remaining 15% went out in monthly stipends to the straw tenants and straw directors. Across the 36 months of the operation, Adaeze's personal cut was estimated by the eventual forensic accountancy report at £487,000. Marcus's cut was estimated at £312,000. The remainder, roughly £242,000, had been distributed in small monthly installments across 11 different straw participants. The lifestyle changes began in 2022. Adaeze paid £47,000 against the principal of her Forest Gate mortgage in 2 lump sums. She bought a new Volkswagen Tiguan in May 2022 outright, in cash, for £34,000. The family took a 2-week holiday to Lagos that summer in business-class seats on Virgin Atlantic. Tinuola, who had just turned 16, was enrolled in September 2022 at a private 6th form college in Stratford on fees of £19,000 a year, paid by Adaeze in a single bank transfer at the start of the academic year. Marcus bought a buy-to-let flat in Romford in late 2022 with a £40,000 cash deposit. He took his new girlfriend to Dubai for Christmas. He upgraded his car from a Vauxhall Astra to a 3-year-old BMW 5 Series. Colleagues noticed the new car, the holiday photos on Marcus's phone screensaver, the casual reference Adaeze made one Monday morning to a Lagos hotel suite that, when one of the junior assessors quietly Googled it later, turned out to cost £600 a night. Nobody asked. The team was understaffed. Both Adaeze and Marcus were carrying caseloads above the team average. Their case clearance figures were among the highest in the borough. Their managers were grateful. Their managers were not curious. No one noticed. No one checked. On the 14th of November 2023, in an office in Sheffield occupied by the Department for Work and Pensions Fraud Investigation Service, a quarterly cross-match algorithm finished a routine run. The algorithm was not new. It had been running, in successive iterations, since 2017. Its function was simple. It pulled every active national insurance number currently attached to a housing benefit claim in any local authority in England and Wales, and compared the registered claim address against the registered employer address for the same national insurance number in HMRC's PAY database. The algorithm flagged any case in which the claim address and the employer address were separated by more than 150 miles. It was a coarse filter. It generated false positives constantly. Most of the flags were resolved within days. Students whose term time and home addresses were far apart, seasonal agricultural workers, fly-in, fly-out construction crews. The vast majority of flagged cases were innocent. But on the morning of the 14th of November, 2023, the algorithm flagged something unusual. It flagged 19 separate national insurance numbers, all currently attached to active housing benefit claims at addresses within the boundaries of Larkmead London Borough Council in Inner East London, whose registered employer addresses were 200 miles or more outside London. 4 of those addresses were in Plymouth, 5 were in Newcastle, 3 were in Liverpool, 4 were in Sheffield, 3 were in Manchester. The duty fraud officer who reviewed the flag that morning was a senior investigating officer named Priya Ramanathan. She was 46 years old, 16 years into a career at the DWP Fraud Investigation Service, and she had seen this exact pattern once before in a case in Brent in 2019 that had ended in 2 convictions. She read the cluster, set her coffee down, and opened a new investigation file. The file was numbered DWP FI 23-08847. She made one phone call before lunch. The call was to the head of Internal Audit at Larkmead London Borough Council, a 39-year-old former HMRC officer named Gareth Stiles. She asked him to send, on a confidential basis and outside the council's normal records disclosure channel, the approval signature audit trail for every one of the 19 flagged claim files. Gareth Stiles sent the audit trail at 4:30 that afternoon. Priya Ramanathan opened the spreadsheet at 4:31. Within 90 seconds, she saw it. Of the 19 claim files flagged that morning, every single one had been approved by one of 2 user IDs, AOCO 7741 or MHR 9203. She picked up her phone, dialed her line manager, and said quietly, "I think we've got one." We're heading into the investigation now, and the scope of this thing is about to get a lot bigger than 19 files. If you've stayed with me this far, you already know this channel doesn't look away from these stories. Subscribe if you haven't yet, hit the bell, and stay with me. The sentencing in this one will tell you exactly how Crown Court treats council officers who weaponize the public purse. The Larkmead investigation ran for 14 weeks before any arrest was made. It was joint agency from the outset. DWP Fraud Investigation Service in the lead, with Larkmead Council Internal Audit handling document retrieval, the Metropolitan Police Economic Crime Unit handling search warrants and financial intelligence, and the Crown Prosecution Service's Specialist Fraud Division pre-briefed from week 3 onwards. Priya Ramanathan widened the cross-match search in the first week. She pulled every claim file at Larkmead Council approved by either AOCO 7741 or MHAR 9203 over the previous 5 years. The total ran to just over 11,000 files. She narrowed by local housing allowance band, by straw landlord pattern, by company registration date, by recent incorporation flag, by single approval threshold. By the end of week 3, she had isolated 61 files that displayed the pattern. By the end of week 4, after a manual review of every one of them, the team had settled on 48 files as the core of the case. The remainder were either legitimate or unprovable. The forensic accountancy team, brought in from a specialist contractor under the DWP framework agreement, traced the money. The total, across the 36 months of the operation, came to £1,041,847.16. Of that figure, approximately £895,000 had passed through the personal current accounts of either Adaeze Okonkwo-Bryant or Marcus Hartley. Property visits began in week 6. DWP investigators and Met police officers visited each of the 48 alleged tenancy addresses. None of them were what they were supposed to be. The Plaistow flat above the chicken and chip shop did not exist. There was only the storage room. A Stratford address was an empty lot awaiting redevelopment. A Walthamstow address belonged to a retired couple who had owned the property for 22 years and had never heard of any of the claimants on their address. An Ilford address was a dental surgery. A Leighton address had been demolished in 2019. Of the 48 files, not a single one corresponded to a real occupied tenancy. In Week 8, investigators traced the straw national insurance numbers to their actual holders. Most of them, 29 of the 48, had no idea their names were being used. They cooperated immediately, signed statements, and were not charged. A smaller group, 11 of the 48, knew vaguely that they were involved in something irregular and had been receiving small monthly payments. Those 11 were interviewed under caution. 6 of them eventually agreed to give evidence for the Crown in exchange for cautions rather than prosecution. The remaining 5 were charged with conspiracy. The digital evidence came in Week 10. A combined warrant secured access to Adaeze's and Marcus's personal mobile phones, personal email accounts, work accounts, and the cloud storage drives associated with both. The Met's Digital Forensics Unit recovered, among other things, a WhatsApp conversation between Adaeze and Marcus that had been running for 31 months. Adaeze, on the 2nd of August 2022 at 10:47 in the evening, quote, M. Ngozie's husband, Tope, is willing. NI is solid. Can do 2 files off him by end of month. Marcus, 4 minutes later, quote, how much exposure? Adaeze, quote, Playstow and Forest Gate. 2 different companies, different banks. Marcus, quote, fine, push them. We need volume by Q4. Son's school fees due John. Adaeze, on the 14th of March 2023 at 9:18 in the evening, quote, we're at 43, slowing it down. Audit cycle starts April. Marcus, quote, yes, cool the new files. Existing, keep flowing. Adaeze, on the 28th of September, 2023 at 11:02 at night, quote, heard a rumor DWP doing a cross-match push this autumn. Probably nothing. Keep eyes open. Marcus, quote, probably nothing. We're invisible at this volume. By week 13, the case file ran to 2,400 pages. The CPS Specialist Fraud Division advised charge in week 14. The Met's Economic Crime Unit secured arrest warrants on the morning of the 13th of February, 2024. The arrests were scheduled for the following day at the Larkmead Civic Center during working hours, while both subjects were sitting at their desks. It was the 14th of February, 2024, a Wednesday, Valentine's Day. Adaeze arrived at the Larkmead Civic Center at 8:52 in the morning. She took the lift to the 3rd floor. She hung her camel-colored long-line blazer on the back of her chair, set her work tote on the desk, and switched on her monitor. The screen woke to the login prompt of the Benefits Case Management System. She typed in her user ID, AOKO7741, and her password. The system accepted both. A junior colleague, a 26-year-old assessor named Folake Adebayo, came over from the next desk holding a Tupperware container of homemade Valentine's cupcakes. Adaeze laughed, took a pink iced one, set it on a napkin beside her keyboard, and said something light about cardio later. Folake went back to her desk. At 9:47 in the morning, the 3rd floor security door opened, and 4 people walked in. 2 were DWP Fraud Investigation Service officers in plain clothes. 2 were Metropolitan Police officers in standard Met uniform from the Economic Crime Unit. Behind them, somewhere out of sight in the stairwell, 2 more Met officers were stationed to manage the floor. Adaeze saw them before they reached her desk. She knew immediately. She set her cup of tea down very carefully on the desk and folded her hands in her lap. The senior DWP officer reached the desk first. Her name was Priya Ramanathan. She was carrying a buff folder under her left arm and her warrant card in her right hand. Ramanathan. Mrs. Okonkwo Bryant? Adaeze. Yes. Ramanathan. I'm Senior Investigating Officer Ramanathan from the DWP Fraud Investigation Service. These are officers from the Metropolitan Police Economic Crime Unit. I need you to stand up and step away from your workstation, please. Adaeze. What is this about? Ramanathan. It's about 48 claim files approved by user ID AOCO 7741 between October 2020 and August 2023. Please stand up, Mrs. Okonkwo Bryant. Adaeze. I don't know what you're talking about. Ramanathan. Mrs. Okonkwo Bryant, stand up. She stood up. Slowly, her hands were still folded in front of her. Her face had gone very still. Adaeze. I want to speak to my manager. I want to speak to my line manager before any of this goes any further. Ramanathan. Your line manager is being briefed by my colleagues in the director's office on the 4th floor as we speak. You're under arrest on suspicion of fraud by abuse of position, contrary to Section 4 of the Fraud Act 2006, money laundering contrary to Section 327 of the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention, when questioned, something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand? She did not answer for a long moment. The 3rd floor office had gone completely silent. 23 assessors at their workstations had stopped what they were doing. The pink cupcake sat untouched on the napkin beside her keyboard. Adaeze. I want a solicitor. Ramanathan. You'll be entitled to one at the station. Hands behind your back, please. Marcus Hartley was arrested in the team meeting room 60 seconds later, where he had been giving a quarterly performance update to 4 junior assessors. He said nothing at all. By 10:15 that morning, both were in the back of separate Met vehicles, heading for Bishopsgate Police Station for processing. They were charged the following afternoon, the 15th of February, 2024. The charges against Adaeze Okonkwo Bryant numbered 17 counts. 1 count of conspiracy to commit fraud contrary to Section 1 of the Criminal Law Act 1977. 11 counts of fraud by abuse of position contrary to Section 4 of the Fraud Act 2006. 3 counts of money laundering contrary to Section 327 of the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002. 1 count of false representation contrary to Section 2 of the Fraud Act 2006. And 1 count of acquiring criminal property contrary to Section 329 of the Proceeds of Crime Act. The charges against Marcus Hartley were broadly parallel, totaling 14 counts. Both were bailed on the 17th of February on conditions that included surrender of passports, daily reporting to a designated police station, and a prohibition on entering any premises operated by Larkmead London Borough Council. Both were suspended from their posts the same day. Their employment was formally terminated by the council on the 3rd of March, following an internal disciplinary process that took less than 3 weeks. The case was sent to Southwark Crown Court for trial. Southwark handled the largest share of serious fraud cases in the Greater London region, and the volume and complexity of the evidence required a designated specialist fraud court. The first plea and trial preparation hearing was held on the 11th of April 2024 before His Honor Judge Roderick Adeyemi. Both defendants entered not guilty pleas to all charges. The trial itself was listed for 6 weeks, beginning on the 3rd of March 2025. The Crown was led by Olivia Chen Marwood KC of 5 Paper Buildings, instructed by the CPS Specialist Fraud Division. Adaze's defense was led by Quentin Bell Hartwell KC of 2 Hare Court. Marcus's defense was led by a junior silk from the same chambers. The jury was sworn on the 5th of March 2025. the Crown called 47 witnesses over the first 4 weeks of trial. They included Senior Investigating Officer Priya Ramanathan, Gareth Stiles of Larkmead Internal Audit, 3 DWP forensic accountants, Folake Adebayo, the junior assessor who had given Adaeze the cupcake on the morning of the arrest, and who testified to having been mentored by Adaeze in the early years, the Director of Revenues and Benefits at Larkmead Council, 6 of the straw national insurance number holders, who had agreed to give evidence in exchange for cautions, Adaeze's cousin, Chinedu Okiki, who had flown up from Plymouth on a witness summons and whose testimony was, by some margin, the most damaging single moment of the trial, and the digital forensics officers who had extracted the WhatsApp conversation. The defense case for Adaeze was that she had been manipulated by Marcus, that her user ID had been used without her knowledge on a significant proportion of the files, and that the lifestyle changes the prosecution pointed to were the product of family loans and inheritance from a deceased uncle in Lagos. Quentin Bell Hartwell, KC, argued the inheritance defense energetically. The Crown produced documentary evidence that the deceased uncle in question had died in 1997, 25 years before any of the lifestyle changes occurred, and had bequeathed an estate of approximately £418. The jury was not persuaded. The jury retired on the 28th of April, 2025, and returned unanimous guilty verdicts on every charge against both defendants on the morning of the 2nd of May. The verdicts took 15 working hours to reach. Sentencing was adjourned for full pre-sentence reports and was listed for the 18th of June, 2025. The Crown called one victim impact statement at sentencing. It was read by the Chief Executive of Larkmead London Borough Council, a woman named Henrietta Caldwell Mensah, on behalf of the council and the residents of the borough. The statement was 3 pages long. The most quoted passage in the press reporting afterwards was the closing paragraph. Quote, "Every pound stolen from the housing benefit budget of this council is a pound that was meant to keep a real family in a real home. The defendants did not steal from an institution. They stole from the women and children sleeping in temporary accommodation in this borough tonight, because the budget they targeted is finite, and every fraudulent pound paid out is a pound we cannot now spend on the people we were elected to serve." His Honor Judge Adeyemi delivered the sentencing remarks on the morning of the 18th of June 2025 in Court 3 of Southwark Crown Court. He addressed Adaeze first. Quote, "Mrs. Okonkwo Bryant, you were appointed to a position of public trust by a London borough whose residents include some of the most economically vulnerable communities in this country. You were not a junior officer. You were a senior assessor with 15 years of service, a graduate degree in social policy, and a documented mentoring role over more junior colleagues. You knew, with a precision that very few of your fellow citizens could match, exactly what damage benefit fraud does to the public purse. You knew, and you used that knowledge not to defend the system, but to dismantle it from inside, methodically, deliberately, and for a period of 3 years. He paused. Quote, "I have considered carefully the mitigation advanced on your behalf. I have read the pre-sentence report. I have read the testimonials from your daughter, from your sister, and from members of your community. I do not doubt that you have been a loving mother and a generous member of your family. None of that displaces the gravity of what you did. The sentence I impose must reflect the breach of trust, the duration of the offending, the sophistication of the scheme, and the total sum involved. You will go to prison for 7 years and 2 months. Marcus Hartley was sentenced immediately afterwards to 5 years and 6 months. Both sentences attracted POCA confiscation hearings under the Proceeds of Crime Act, which were held in October 2025. Adaeze was ordered to repay £487,000, recoverable from the Forest Gate property, the Volkswagen Tiguan, and her remaining bank balances. Marcus was ordered to repay £312,000, recoverable from the Romford buy-to-let. Adaeze began her sentence at HMP Bronzefield, a closed-category women's prison in Ashford, Surrey, on the 18th of June, 2025. With standard release on license, her earliest release date is in August 2028. Her daughter Tinuola moved in with Anthony's mother in Lewisham. The Forest Gate house was sold at auction in November 2025 for £298,000. The proceeds went to the Crown. Marcus Hartley began his sentence at HMP Wandsworth and was transferred 8 months later to HMP Stanford Hill, an open prison on the Isle of Sheppey. His earliest release date is November 2027. The Larkmead London Borough Council Benefits Assessment Team was restructured in the autumn of 2025. The single approval threshold for housing benefit claims was lowered from £15,000 to £4,000. A mandatory second pair of eyes sign-off was introduced for all new tenancy approvals. Internal audit sampling was increased from 2% to 9% of approved claims. A risk-based flagging system was integrated with the DWP cross-match database. Senior Investigating Officer Priya Ramanathan was awarded an internal commendation in early 2026 for the case. The DWP Fraud Investigation Service used the Larkmead investigation as the template for a national insider fraud review that opened in March 2026, examining benefits assessment user IDs at 31 other English local authorities. As of the time of this episode, 4 further councils have had similar schemes uncovered. This case was calculated. But this case on the right-hand side will show you what happens when an insider with even more authority decides nobody is watching. Click it now.